Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us on RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez.
I'm Robert McNeely. It's a beautiful Tuesday here in Auburn, Alabama, and we anticipate another big day in the Beltway with Robert F. Kennedy's confirmation vote. They will go to cloture and then ideally a final vote for the nominee for the Department of Health and Human Services. And of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visiting President Trump. So an exciting day and one that has consequences on this February 4th.
Yeah, a lot of America First news to cover today on February 4th. And of course, we'll be covering that wall-to-wall coverage when the Israeli Prime Minister is in Washington. That'll start a bit later today, but within the hour, we'll be going to Capitol Hill to hear from RFK Jr. and also the Senate Finance Committee on that vote there. And there should be no reason why RFK Jr. isn't the next HHS director.
Right. You know, I'm very interested in this vote. We had Chris Wright last night, who is now the Secretary of the Department of Energy, and that's someone probably less known out of all the names, but a huge history in regards to energy production. He really knows that world, so he'll be a great addition to the cabinet as well. So President Trump's team continues to grow in Washington, D.C., but this one might have the biggest view because of the name in and of itself. His uncle, of course, the 35th President of the United States, his father, the former Attorney General, under his brother as well. So this is someone who's known in political circles and political world. There, quite frankly, if there is royalty in America, it's the Kennedy clan. But you've had his cousins and other family members really turning on him, saying the worst things about him, which this is clearly a man who has spent his career fighting for clean energy, clean water, clean air, has taken on big corporations and simply asked questions. And here's the funny thing, Matthew. These people throw out conspiracy theorists, this, that, and the other. And this man was a Democrat most of his life. Well, the funny thing is, most of what he's fought for ends up being true, especially in the last decade.
Yeah, and isn't that the case? A lot of things that you'd think is some theory actually turned out to be true. So looking forward to seeing this RFK Jr. nomination today, and we'll have that here for you in its entirety. Of course, it's already been a very busy week in news, especially in political news and international news. I mean, the Trump administration sending out some details about various countries and the promises made, promises kept. So let's see what those are, because at the end of the day, it's factual that these following things happen. So we'll report them. Number one, in Colombia, President Trump ensured that Colombia will accept military repatriation flights of illegal immigrants. Happened.
Right.
In Venezuela, the same thing with Rick Grenell, getting 6 American hostages set free there. I mean, the list goes on. Panama, Canada, Mexico, and more things going on with Gaza. So it's great to see all of the tariffs even be paused in Canada and Mexico.
Right, and this is really within a 48-hour period. President Trump, this morning as of yesterday, was simply about to get on the phone with the Mexican president. She then pledges 10,000 troops to the border. He then later speaks to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada, and then they're going to spend $200 million on the border to stop the fentanyl crisis. Oh, and then he had some time to meet with the Florida Panthers, which he really seemed to enjoy. He had a framed jersey from them that said 45-47, and then his jersey that they handed him that he held on the desk, took pictures individually with the whole team and with the entire team in the Oval Office, had 47 on the back, but on the patches 45. I mean, what a cool jersey.
Not only that, the hockey stick, I think it looked like it was made of gold. I mean, what a cool
awesome.
memento for last year's Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. So, yeah, a lot of coverage, including we're seeing that Secretary of State, already making 2 trips, Panama and El Salvador.
Right.
I believe he's in, I don't know if it's Costa Rica today or Puerto Rico, we'll see, but one of the other, making a 3rd trip. So a lot going on right now. All of this brought to you by a number of great sponsors, including Colonial Metals Group. This is the free gold guide that you can get if you simply go to freegoldguide.com and use that QR code.
Yeah, an excellent way to hedge your bet against inflation. I mean, this has been nasty with the Biden administration, what's happened in the last few years. So scan that QR code, shield your savings now. You get this beautiful free gold guide, and it's no obligation. Just a good way to look at the different options. You can convert your 401k or IRA into gold, silver, tangible metals, as well as, look into your properties, your assets, what will get you to the golden age of retirement as well, something for all of us to think about. I don't know if I'll ever retire with a great gig like this, because we get to work with the American people to defend our Constitution, defend our founding principles. And think about this, Matthew, too, the vocation we're in. This is the only line of work that's actually detailed in the Constitution, how important to have a free and fair press. And we noticed how they haven't been exactly fair in the past.
Well, that's the truth right there. It's been very unfair, a lot of lying going on over the years. And that's why conservative media is growing in the way it is now. Right. And yeah, I don't think there is room for retirement in this kind of position, because the 24/7 news cycle, you just want to keep going. I mean, even if you're 85, I mean, if you're 85 years old and you're just trying to report the news, I mean, it'd be a little bit more difficult. But still, though, like President Trump said, a lot of people in their 80s and even 90s are actually very sharp and very funny and really with it. And
right.
Yeah, so yeah, many years to come in the news biz, but again, because there's so much going on, and until the end of time, and for those of you that believe in the Bible, obviously the return of Jesus. So that kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of news to cover until then.
Until then.
And as we're here on Tuesday, February 4th. So we're taking one day at a time, and you're looking at the White House there, live right now in Washington, D.C., of course, and President Trump back there already signing executive orders again on day one of his third week of his administration.
Right, really addressing the issues that will make America great again. And how amazing is it that Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, is now the acting director of USAID. I just want to run through what the White House sent out regarding the waste and abuse. It does run deep, and for decades this agency has been putting other nations first and other very strange DEI programs way over ourselves. So for example, $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. $70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland, which is bizarre. $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. And the list goes on and on. Hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. So for decades, that funded terrorist activities, whether it was the USSR when it invaded Afghanistan. We know how many people were harmed from the poppy seed trade that led to heroin trafficking and human trafficking, and our government's funding it. It's bizarre to me.
If you saw yesterday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was outside, and she listed off a few of those as well. And she even said, quote, "We don't need to be funding this quote unquote crap."
Right.
And then she moved away and walked back into the office, because at the end of the day, this is not an administration that is career politician-esque. This is all about the common sense of America. What is best for America first?
Right, and that's why you see people like Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, other individuals. Think about Vice President Vance, who was a strong critic of President Trump pre the first administration. And then he said, oh, wow, this guy is actually doing what he said he was going to do, unlike virtually all politicians in the modern era. So it's not Republican versus Democrat. It's we the people versus the deep state, bloated bureaucracy. I like to call them the League of Shadows, and it's a group of internationalist globalists who were told at Davos recently, too bad, I'm throwing tariffs, into the mix, and we've seen how successful that has been in world negotiations.
This is stuff you won't hear on the mainstream media, as you know. So the following statement that he just said, I mean, come on. And same things with what I say sometimes too. I mean, you just won't hear it over there because they really don't like truth. Those are the facts. It's 9:13 Eastern time. We're getting ready to go to Capitol Hill. We're going to see RFK Jr. What a great person to go from, Democrat, independent kind of way of life to, you know what, the truth's on that side. I'm going over there.
Right. It's an interesting thing because even growing up in the Chicago area, it was fascinating for me coming from really an Irish and Italian background. So to give you a purview on that, Chicago Democrats were actually very conservative people. You think about the Kennedy family in the 60s, more of a right-wing movement even within the big cities. That has changed a lot, especially in the last 2 decades. And I grew up in this world of suburban conservatism. Henry Hyde was my congressman, the Hyde Amendment, of course. I remember him in the parades in the back of the convertible waving to everyone, how personable he was. And I thought as a young kid, wow, it's so cool to see our Constitution in action. There's the federal office that is closest to the people, the House of Representatives. And to see how the modern Republican and Democrat parties have really changed, in some ways for the better, in some ways for the worse. To now have this influx of populism thanks to Donald Trump and people like Bobby Kennedy, we are very blessed, and God is not done with this nation. It's morning in America again.
Exactly. You know, the outsider candidates, the outsiders that are of the people, always good to see that. And we see that with President Trump. And we saw that early on in his first administration prior to becoming president in some of the Republican presidential debates.
Right.
He would say, I'm not bought and paid for, basically, and all the donors that are booing me right now, those are the donors of these guys up here on the stage.
Right.
I mean, he just straight up called it.
Yeah.
You know, so and how they infiltrated the audience, you know, and that's part of perception's very powerful.
Right.
And that's why RSBN is very powerful. Because what we did back in the day, obviously you and I weren't here back in 2015,
right,
but we knew about them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's so powerful, that perception of seeing and hearing thousands and thousands and thousands of people at the rallies, at the events, hearing the speeches, not because the media could easily mind control that whole thing and just show President Trump on the podium and do like a 5-second clip and then hammer all this information that's false about him,
right,
not showing the speech, not showing the people. But we did it here at Right Side Broadcasting Network in its entirety, and no network on earth did what Right Side Broadcasting Network did back in 2015.
No, it's something to be very proud of, and it's something I love asking with a journalism background. I love just asking people at the rallies or whatever's involving President Trump and this movement, even with the inauguration recently, and I'll ask them at CPAC as well, what got you involved? Because so many people were not involved for years and years. It was President Trump, and doesn't that show you the brilliance of the American people, that they were able to see through the media? They were able to see that. I remember that CBS debate. Lindsey Graham was in the audience. He stood up and clapped because everyone was, oh, they got Trump, because Trump said, that's all of Jeb's donors, that's all the Republican, and everyone, you know, at home was saying, yes, he's right. You know? While all these Republicans who were sitting there thought, we got him now. Oh, no, they didn't. And that was probably my favorite debate in the primary.
Oh, it's so good. Watching the replays of President Trump debates, the GOAT of presidential debates, man, it's fun to do. All right, let's go to one of our sponsors as we await this great confirmation nomination by the Senate Finance Committee. So we're hoping to see that here within the hour. Republican Red Winery. So republicanred.com. You see the great wines there on the side of your screen. That's a sparkling wine, and then a Pinot Noir wine for the Right Side. Kind of a perfect fit for Right Side Broadcasting Network as well.
Such a great decoration, but also if you want to pop that bubbly for a Wine Wednesday, or, you know, I think you still have time before the big game with some expedited shipping. And of course, you have that code there for discounts, RSBN from Lodi, California. This is a brilliant group of people, family owned, and from the Central Coast, where you really can't find better wine. Of course, that's, you know, the winos, they're going to argue about that, and that's okay. But our Central Coast of California, one of the best spots for growing. So this comes right from there, republicanred.com, and your money's going to good causes. So a portion of the proceeds always go to conservative and or Republican causes. So wonderful people over at republicanred.com.
All right, there you go. RSBN is the promo code, like with many of our products here, because there's such a good percentage off using that RSBN promo code. We'll get to MyPillow and others a little bit later. It's about 9:17 this morning. Yeah, talking a lot about the rally coverage and seeing now in the White House press briefing room that they've opened it up to all sorts of great media, conservative media, new media, podcasts, and others. And of course, the traditional legacy mainstream media is there. But, you know, I see them more as a mind control reporter. Let's just be honest about what's happening there. They're trying to take information and then spin it and then go report it to people and to control what it's all about is just the people that they're reporting to on camera, whether it's online or whether it is on television. And that's what's been happening for decades. And it's been this tit for tat, little bit of, oh, hey, let's play footsie with the spokesperson. Even if it's a Republican president back in the day, Democrat president, it's just been a game for so long.
Oh, no question.
But until President Trump showed up, showed everybody what's up, and then said, hey, that's fake news. And the fake news probably went, whoa, they're on to us.
No, it's a new day. WhiteHouse.gov/new media. If you're a social media contributor or influencer, you might as well apply. They had 10,000 join there, and hopefully everyone will be able to sit in those front row seats right next to the legacy media. As of right now, they have their spot, but I don't know. It was interesting watching White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt in her first couple of press conferences last week. Even though those legacy media items, they were at the front, and I call them items because sometimes they don't act like human beings, but they sat there almost like, what's around us? It's like free speech is around us. Oh no.
Free speech. Oh no, we don't have the control over the narrative. And that's what it's all about. That perception, the court of public opinion, the narrative, what the American people get to know. No, you get to know everything you possibly can. You're going to get that at conservative media, and you'll get that at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Oh, no question about it. We want you to make up your own mind. We will, and we'll be unafraid to say this is when our analysis happens, our opinion happens. This is what's happening. We know it's fact. So we will share with you where we're at in that analysis. We won't just take something and say, this is cold hard fact. You need to believe this. It's up to you, the American people viewing this, to make that up for yourselves. But we'll present these stories. We'll share with you all of those things. And that's why we want to work with you as well. And that's why we have a new email correspondence, feedback at rsbn.tv. If you want to send in a story or something going on in your neck of the woods, especially if it needs to be shared, we'd love to hear about it.
Exactly. And that's all within the context of people that work at the network that are about truth and common sense and the Constitution and freedom. So whenever we do share opinion, obviously there's op-eds in newspapers and there's opinion shows all across the world. But whenever we share ours, you know in context, that's where that's coming from. But we really don't even have to say that because all you have to do is go back and watch a bunch of rallies and hear what Bobby has had to say, hear what I've had to say, and just know that we're coming from a place of just, we want freedom for the country, we want freedom for the world, and we also want to report what's going on. So we'll be doing that today. At 10 o'clock Eastern time, we'll be going to Capitol Hill. RFK Jr., of course, may become the Secretary of the Health and Human Services, which would be quite awesome.
Oh, yes. I mean, a career dedicated to clean air, clean water, working on a bipartisan basis. And, you know, coming from a huge Democrat family and someone who stepped up. I really love the clip that we were able to share last week when he said, look, there's not Republican kids, there's not Democrat kids, but there's a chronic illness problem in this country. Over 60% of Americans are dying of these diseases, and a lot of it's due to choice and simply due to poisoning with what the FDA puts through with other agencies that are not defending the American people. It's a problem when our soil is so contaminated that Europe will not take our beef or our poultry, even some of our seafood. And this man has been at the forefront of this, taking on those big corporations for decades now. And so this is a perfect resume for a department like this. And I'm just so sad to see all the, you want to talk about vaccine misinformation? People have been saying that this man is trying to take away time-tested medications and such. And he said, no, I want people to have the choice. They shouldn't have to be forced into it. It's simply a matter of choice. And Bobby Kennedy is the man for the mission. I'm very curious on this vote because of the lobby on the right side of things and on the left who have gone after him, trying to manipulate where he truly stands.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, health and human services, pharmaceuticals, obviously big industry right there. So we're looking forward to seeing RFK Jr. in that right spot there that President Trump has appointed for that position there. And then, of course, a little bit later today, hearing that Tulsi Gabbard also for the Department of National Intelligence will be having a confirmation hearing. So we'll see just how today goes. And of course, there's a lot of coverage happening, especially when there's breaking news here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We can always check that out as well as we have here in the recent past. So you can count on us for not only political news, also other breaking news that is of national interest and even international interest, as we have live feeds that are available to us, not only in this country, the live feed that we have, they have bureaus all around the world as well.
Right, so this is really such a time for the new media, such a time to get the truth out there and cover everything that can affect you in your neck of the woods.
Exactly. So Let's go to Tax Network USA, great company.
Oh, yes, tnusa.com/RSBN. April 15th, right around the corner. So call 800-357-1415. That's tnusa.com/RSBN. I mean, these are real experts here who can handle property tax issues, state taxes, the federal income tax, which maybe that will go away in the near future. We'll see what happens there as President Trump wants to build the external revenue service and perhaps get rid of the federal income tax, which would just be amazing because it's been a stalwart of the progressive movement, and on average we could save $10,000 to $20,000 per household. I mean, think about that. But this is a group in the meantime that knows how to protect you and your assets while we go down that road.
Exactly. 800-357-1415. All right, to your point about the External Revenue Service, what I've gathered with that is that this would have to do with other countries around the world, right?
Exactly.
So when it comes to taxes and that kind of thing. We're going to get into the tariff conversation here in just a second about Canada and Mexico, but a great sponsor there, tnusa.com. So outside of that, though, I haven't heard a report yet about, abolishing the IRS yet.
Right.
And also the federal taxes going away either. So I haven't heard that yet. So if you've heard that somewhere, great. We could talk about that because we're live, so why not?
Oh, yeah. So there's been some discussion with House members, and it's people in the Freedom Caucus. You have, of course, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She's also actually introduced legislation to build an extra portrait on Mount Rushmore, being President Trump. So that would be interesting to see if that would pass and if President Trump would sign that. It would be very fun because there is some room on the mountain, but I know that would bother some people.
Yeah, exactly. No, it'd be actually great to see that happen at Mount Rushmore. Definitely there's a spot for it, and I think that after what President Trump did just in his first administration deserves one.
Right.
Then goes through what he just went through for 4 years, deserves one. And then now for another 4 years of greatness, definitely President Trump should have his face on Mount Rushmore. What do you guys think? I mean, in the chats there on Rumble and YouTube and elsewhere, I think it's a thumbs up for that.
Yeah, send in your thoughts, please. We like to read them and review them, and please be PC. But you never know. It's always fun out in the Twitter sphere, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Almost at the bottom of the hour here in Washington, D.C., going to Capitol Hill here shortly for the RFK Jr. nomination. And we'll see if today, I'm looking forward to seeing him sworn in. I'm looking forward to Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and others just sworn in, get into their positions, get this thing rolling to fully make America great again. Here's the question. What are they afraid of? If nobody did anything wrong, why would anybody hesitate for Kash Patel?
Right.
Why would anybody hesitate for Pam Bondi? Are you scared? Why would you be scared? Did you do something that is outright illegal and it's going to be found out? Who knows?
Right.
I mean, those are the facts.
I mean, Marsha Blackburn brought this up after Shifty Schiff in the committee hearing with Kash Patel brought this up. She said, to my Democrat friends, why are you so afraid of Kash? Why are you so afraid of these great nominees that President Trump has put forth? And then she simply asked, have you been involved in X, Y, and Z that they're accusing you of? And of course not, Senator. It's almost, Kash had a couple of moments where he was literally laughing at the other side. And I think that's been so frustrating for the far left because you've noticed how they've spoken over them in these committee hearings, almost
that's all they
badgering.
Have.
Right, they're badgering the witness.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's literally all they have is, Kash could be saying truth, which he does, and then Adam Schiff or Cory Booker will speak over him and say, but what do you mean by that? Like acting like they're an authority, which,
right.
You know what, they aren't. I mean,
exactly.
Let's be real. They hold a position that is of so-called power as a senator of New Jersey, Cory Booker, and Adam Schiff out there in California. But I'm thinking the people, even on the left side of the hour, are probably getting sick of people that are just not common sense, man. I mean, look at what happened in Southern California. That wouldn't have happened with common sense leadership from the federal government and the state and local governments.
Well, that's what's so frustrating because they're also, many of these people, former litigators, they're lawyers. They know basically trial rules and how our Western civilization's built out in that regard and how you don't do that in court because if that happened, it would be the gavel and the judge would simply say, counsel, come to the chambers. What are you doing? You don't berate people who are on the stand. You don't mistreat them. You present your case. You can make strong arguments and have really bold questions, but you let someone answer the question.
Exactly.
It's rather simple, and it's become this circus now. And I've seen people even, another good question for our viewership too, what do you think about the 17th Amendment? Should there be direct election of senators? Because we've seen this turn into somewhat of a circus, and people end up, I'm not even going to watch that committee hearing because I learn nothing ends up happening, and it just ends up becoming clickbait for these congressmen or senators who are trying to get reelected.
Yeah,
so.
it's just it's a dog and pony show that is the swamp in D.C. However, now that President Trump has won, now that Vice President J.D. Vance, now that we have RFK Jr. and others all into the positions that we need to see them in, we're going to slowly start to see the swamp drained and less to this fake political junk that we've just been spoon-fed for decades, right?
No, it's so true. I mean, it really is. That's the coolest thing I think about President Trump, what he was able to accomplish in the first term. So he literally turned 20 years of foreign policy upside down, especially in regards to how Washington views China. Think about this. You have Senator Mark Warner and then our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They were two of the only people in the Senate, really, of the last decade who were so firm on China is bad, it's not good for America. Both of different political persuasions, probably 90% of the time would disagree on most issues, especially domestically, came together. And that was because President Trump pulled that curtain and said, these guys are no good, and they're manipulating their currency, and it's hurting us ultimately. And it's people like Joe Biden, who he toasted Xi Jinping back in 2020 at the Clinton White House and said, welcome to the World Trade Organization. They should have never done that. And the argument was that freedom would bring a better and safer America and China working together globally. That has not been the case. The Chinese Communist Party, clearly a group of liars. And if you see any of their proceedings, I mean, Xi Jinping had his predecessor removed from the last communist gathering. And if you look at the flags, it's all of the old, it's the Chinese flags, but also the old USSR symbols. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is the new evil empire. And it's the Red Scare. We have to be vigilant when it comes to China. And hopefully one day they'll be like they used to be. I mean, 5,000 years of great history. The Chinese people are wonderful people. They're truly being oppressed by this government.
And that's the thing that we see in a number of countries around the world. It really is about the free world versus those few people in these leadership positions that are just controlling them and putting the thumb down on them. And that's something we said, no way in America. We saw it on November 5th. Great way that we went with President Trump. As it's 9:31 at the bottom of the hour here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. American Financing, you can save $800 on average per month if you work with them when it comes to the refinancing, the home loans, and always good to work with patriotic people, patriotic companies like American Financing. So if you're in that market to do something like that, this is the people to call.
Oh yes, and with credit card debt higher than ever, mostly because of this Biden-inflation, what's taken place over the last few years, most of us are paying 20% or more in those rates. And if you go with American Financing today, they might be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So you're saving 2 months of payments. That's huge for a homeowner with the average of $800 a month. So call our friends, the Patriot experts over at American Financing. That is 888-402-0299, 888-402-0299, AmericanFinancing.net/RSBN.
Awesome sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. As we move on here, I'm looking at our Truth Social page on RSBN, and 1.53 million followers, so 1.5 million followers so far, and that's growing, and of course on X as well. So when we're not on the air, you can go ahead and see us on social media as well. And of course, you can follow various people that work at the network on Right Side Broadcasting Network. So anyway, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is a lot of great things happening with the international trade situation with tariffs. So President Trump says, okay, 25% for you, 25% for you to the north and the south. They say 25% to you. And now it's all, I wouldn't say null and void, but it's a 30-day pause for both countries because both countries' leaders, Canada and Mexico, as we know, have called and talked with President Trump, and they're going to do great things now to help out with the borders.
Yes, and Sean Foyt, the great activist, the great pastor and musician, who was at the inauguration, got to say hello to him. back at the airport as people were trying to get out of the, avoid the winter storms, especially down here in the South. He actually posted on X yesterday saying, tariffs are as America as it gets. I mean, American history started with that. One of the first things that President George Washington signed and enacted was an overseas tariff. And that's what actually helped create the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard's first task was not only defending the homeland, but to enact the tariffs to make sure that the other side was paying their due diligence.
Exactly. You're talking about the U.S. Coast Guard.
Right.
Exactly. Right. So we're going to go to a video, if our director can locate that from yesterday, just in case you didn't see it, as we get ready to go live right there to Capitol Hill within the half hour. This is the Senate Finance Committee. It will vote on the Secretary of the Health and Human Services nomination, of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So we're going to see all of that here live. We'll go there uninterrupted. Only way something like that gets interrupted is if there's major breaking news. But other than that, of course, we're going to have this coverage in its entirety today, including later today, to your point from the top of the broadcast, Robert, that we're going to have coverage of President Trump's meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well. I saw yesterday on I-24 News, which is an Israeli news outlet, where the Prime Minister, before he was boarding the Wings of Zion, so that is our Air Force One, it's called Wings of Zion. So before he boarded, he talked about a number of things that he wants to talk to President Trump about. One, victory over Hamas. Two, releasing all hostages. Three, dealing with the Iranian terror axis and all of its components. And also broadening the circle of peace in the Middle East and strengthen security and achieve a remarkable era of peace through strength. So those words from the Prime Minister of Israel as he will meet with the President later today. We'll have all that coverage live here as well. All brought to you by great sponsors, including, which we haven't talked about in a minute, freetrumpbook.com. Freetrumpbook.com. The great Mike Huckabee, who, speaking of Israel, is the U.S. ambassador to Israel.
Right, yeah, freetrumpbook.com. He is responsible for all this. The Kid's Guide to the Courage of the President and the Kid's Guide to President Trump will show them all of these amazing policies that have not only taken place in the last 2 weeks, but what happened in the first term as well. So a great free gift for the youngins in your life, or those neighbors who have their head in the sand too. And there is 2 guides and a Christmas ornament. So Christmas always seems to be right around the corner, just a few months away. freetrumpbook.com, a wonderful gift. And did I mention it was free?
Yeah,
so makes sense to.
Always good. It's very cool to have something like that where it's showing President Trump saying fight, 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 right, with that ornament there. So a lot of good stuff over there at freetrumpbook.com. Go ahead and take a look when you get a chance. And we're going to see RFK Jr. here shortly. Also, since you were talking about the Coast Guard prior, Director, if we could try, if there's a moment there. I know the thing is our directors and producers working, of course, behind the scenes, making sure we've got the right live feeds and all of that going on. But if we have a second for the Coast Guard video from yesterday that we aired here on the network, intercepting a vessel of 14 illegal aliens out off the coast of California. This video from the Department of Defense. Let's go to that right now.
Hands up! Hands up! Manos arriba! Going over. I have principal.
I got it.
I'm going right here.
Yep. Watch out.
¿Cuántas personas tienen? ¿Cuántas personas tienen?
12, 13, 14.
Oh, which one is it? 12, 13 o 14?
Somos 14.
14?
Sí.
¿Tienes niños?
No,
¿Qué es su nacionalidad? ¿Todos son mexicanos?
no somos mexicanos.
¿Tienes niños?
No.
Yeah, we have POSCON ISS complete. 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12. I got 14. What do you have? drag in BO. Vessel was compliant on step 1. Initial count 14 POB, all claiming Mexican nationality. ¿Tienes un chaqueta? Chaqueta? ¿Tienes uno o no?
Okay, so that, of course, was from about a week ago, the Coast Guard intercepting the vessel off the coast of California outside of Tijuana. And I was just saying to Robert, if that was, more elderly or women and children, we wouldn't want to show that kind of thing. I mean, even though people are trying to get into the country, but we don't know who the people are, and we didn't know who those 14, all above 18 years old males are. So this is part of what the Coast Guard is doing, and we have to have borders here. Right. And we've talked about that too. When we say we travel to a different country, we can't just walk in without documents or a passport or whatever. You got to have your documents and do it the right way. Of course, our country has people from all walks of life, and that's wonderful because it makes America great,
It does.
But you have to be a legal person to be in this country. So
exactly. I think about Brad Paisley's song "American Saturday Night." All the traditions we have, and it's some lyrics: French kiss, Italian ice, margarita in the moonlight. We celebrate. Think about the different holidays coming up. We're going to have St. Patrick's Day, and then of course you go into Cinco de Mayo, and we celebrate freedom. We love freedom here in America in all of its different forms. So of course, what it adheres to the Constitution, the rule of law, and law and order as well. And look at that tiny boat. 14 people on there. It could have capsized. So the humanitarian aspect of it as well. And ever since President Trump got into office 15 days ago, the border crossing, and including the ports, down 95%. So a huge success.
Exactly. And to your point, cultures to be celebrated here. There's all kinds of different great restaurants and food and
Right.
just fun things. And the PC police is like, oh, wait, you talked about a different race. I'm like, okay, big deal.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Well, we see that now with the Washington Commanders. There's a fight by Indian tribes in and around our nation's capital to return to the name of Redskins. And if that's not achieved, I actually saw a report this week that they might just go back to the old regalia and stay the Commanders, but have the insignia of what they once had because it honored, former chiefs in the area. So, something to think about.
And you think about the Kansas City Chiefs coming
Right.
up, of course.
Exactly.
And then I think in Cleveland, of course, the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, right?
Right.
So, all right, so we'll get to some more sports talk in just a second. Why don't we just cover it real quick before we get to our next sponsor? On Friday, our coverage that we have, we'll have coverage throughout the week. Robert's going to wear red tie. I'll wear the green tie because the Eagles and the Chiefs game. I've been saying the Eagles will win. He's saying the Chiefs will win. What do you guys say out there if you care? I know some of you do, a lot of NFL fans out there. So anyway, we'll wear those ties. We'll have a little bit of fun. But within that framework, of course, covering what's going on out there in the world, especially there on Capitol Hill, where we'll go soon with RFK Jr. So Brightcore, an awesome company here at the network.
Oh, yes, Kimchi One. This is all about gut health, immune support. That really starts right in your belly, goes all the way up to your brain, and can make or break your work week or even spending time with loved ones. So buy 2, get 1 free. Visit mybrightcore.com/RSBN. Call 888-722-0936. Receive up to 50% off. This is all having anti-aging properties, something so good for you to get your day started.
Exactly. Kimchi One, the product right there on the right side of your screen. An awesome sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and a great product as well. As it's 9:42, or about 18 minutes or so from RFK Jr., the session there with the Senate Finance Committee. We'll see the nomination process and see the vote. And then, of course, looking forward to seeing RFK Jr. sworn in if the vote goes the right way, which we see that and we hope that it will. And then that's swearing in process. Not sure if that'll be today or this week, but it'll be great to see that. Outside of the RFK Jr. confirmation nomination situation, Tulsi Gabbard a bit later today as well.
Right, that's so exciting to see, and how she really laid out in that confirmation hearing. She became a target of the Biden administration, of Hillary Clinton as well. She was spied upon simply for having a difference of opinion, and someone who ultimately, I'm sure it was not easy for her, left the Democrat Party, and then we saw during the campaign joined the Republican Party. So someone that is really feared by the far left. And we saw her go toe-to-toe with then Senator Kamala Harris in the 2020 Democrat primaries. And she took her to task on her record with school busing, with being the DA in San Francisco, putting so many people behind bars for a long period of time for low-level crimes, marijuana possession. And these were people who also did not necessarily have access to an attorney or could hire an attorney of their choice. So usually a public defender. And what's crazy is we saw the former vice president go on Charlemagne the God's podcast and say, oh, I like to hit some of the marijuana and different names for that, and specific brands as well. So she's cackling and laughing about her drug use while she put people in jail that will have offenses on their record for the longest time and could not defend themselves. I mean, the hypocrisy is incredible.
It is. It definitely is. And that's why the corruption is being taken away from our government via President Trump and this team that he is bringing in. That's what the goal is, I believe, to reform this country, to make it great again from the inside out.
Right.
And that's what's happening. And so let's shift over to RFK Jr. and the whole MAHA thing, Make America Healthy Again. There has to be, I think, a whole line of products, by the way, out there. Hats.
Oh, yes.
Ties, T-shirts. That color green is awesome. I'd wear one on St. Patrick's Day, wouldn't you?
Well, of course. Not only for the great celebration of the Irish gentleman known as St. Patrick, who actually was Italian and was on Spanish expedition, but we'll go into that later, the history of that. But someone who brought the religion to Ireland, which was once a pagan Celtic nation, and now, of course, a big Christian nation. Well, things have changed politically there a bit with the secular left, but we could dive into Irish politics as well on one of the future shows. But Miss America from Alabama wore a Make America Healthy Again green dress. So it's becoming somewhat of a fashion statement now to wear that Maha green.
I think it's great. It's wonderful, and we'll be both wearing not only the Eagles and the Chiefs colored ties on Friday. That also is Make America Healthy Again and Make America Great Again.
Right, so, a good combo.
Yeah, not bad at all. So let's go to PatriotAddictDeals.com, another sponsor here at the network. As you see the Trump combat knife on the left side of your screen. So you can go to PatriotAddictDeals.com, or you can go to that QR code, and also you'll get, I think it's 20 or 30% off actually, using the RSBN 30 promo code. So this guy here, Robert McNeely, goes to these websites, purchases items on there. I should do the same thing. I remember you got a pretty cool item, the die-cast Trump Force One plane that was on there. I'm not sure if they have any more left, but there's still a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah, I jumped on that really quick because I heard there's only 200, so I went to that. So I have to really discipline myself and not go to these websites. But I encourage you to take advantage of the 30%
No discipline
discount.
for them.
No discipline for you. No, it's
go to it as much as you want.
As much as you want using RSBN 30 at checkout. Of course, the QR code there. But that's a really cool knife. I actually collect knives myself as well. And I have a few friends in the knife business and in sales, and they send over some really cool stuff. But that's a collector's item right there for sure.
PatriotAddictDeals.com, an awesome sponsor here at Right Side. As it's 9:47 Eastern, you're taking a live look on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. as various senators take their seats, and the galley there watches on. And then, of course, we'll see RFK Jr. in the middle seat. We'll see if there's any fireworks back and forth verbally at all. Hopefully it's a smooth process, as this is a selection from the President of the United States, who we, the people, said we want him in office. It was too big to rig. The majority of the country are common sense, just solid, good people. And even liberals that are out there, good-hearted people. Unfortunately, something in the mind virus happening. I'm just calling it how it is.
Right.
If you were to vote for, way left policies that are anti, God or anti-morals, that's obviously everybody's choice. And some people don't even believe in God. We get it. But at the end of the day, we know that the majority of this nation, voted for President Trump. So that means the people that he has appointed are part of what we voted for anyway. It's just an extension of.
And the excitement around it. I don't recall a time, having been involved in politics for most of my life, where so many people so enthusiastic about a candidate and really the best showing of a Republican candidate since 1988. And that's when then Vice President George H.W. Bush was successful in his run against Michael Dukakis for the presidency. So on an electoral count and also a popular vote count, I mean, this was such a robust campaign. And think about this, Matthew, too. 31 states won, all with some form of voter ID law. Now, the former vice president was successful in 19 states with the District of Columbia that don't happen to have voter ID law. I'll let you decide that, the viewers at home, if there's something strange about that, but what a coincidence.
Exactly. It's so true. It was just so great to see all 7 swing states that we were talking about leading up to the election during the campaign season, how important they were. And President Trump and the team, they traveled to all those states so many times.
Right.
And then all of them won for President Trump. So, which of course won the election. There was 96 electoral votes. That was really all what it was about.
It's really what it boiled down to, and everything in our purview leading up to that was really showing going in that direction, and then it did that night. You know, even I thought there were a couple others that he might have been able to pick and prod, like New Hampshire and such, but regardless, everything swung to the right. By the county level, it's extraordinary to look at the map on the county level. Thousands and thousands of counties. She won a handful, like several hundred. You know, that's kind of amazing to think about how much of a swing to the right we saw in California, New York, Illinois even. And I had friends and family back home in the Chicago area saying, oh my goodness, by the percentages, this was a pretty close election leading through the night, even in Illinois, even though the vice president was successful there. That was the closest that's happened in a long time.
Same thing with Virginia and New Jersey and Minnesota. I mean, we were watching that night thinking, wait a minute, Virginia kept going back and forth.
Right.
Red to blue, red to blue, red to blue, as the numbers were coming in from the precincts. And then Minnesota slowly back and forth. And New Jersey, not as much, but still a lot more people. This is MAGA country. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
this
really
is Trump country. It's not just because of Donald Trump. It's because of what he stands for. I think that's what people miss on the left, is it's what he stands for is why we love the president, because he stands for truth, common sense, freedom, defending our constitutional rights, making our country safe and free again, you know, those type of things. And he already did great things during the first administration. So we knew, okay, he went through, and why did he go through so much in those 4 years, this past 4 years? It's because there are people that hate all of those things.
Right, exactly.
And so now here we go. Third week of the administration, feels like we're 3 years in because of the amount of executive orders that he signed, but it's been great to see.
And using that executive order authority within the purview of the Constitution, within his rights as an executive, he told Mayor Karen Bass in LA, you have certain executive authority, and that's why he helped turn on the water in California using the Army Corps of Engineers. That's why they are also down at the border assembling the wall with the Marines. He has rights as commander-in-chief, and that's why you might hear from the left, oh, all these executive orders, it's ridiculous. But look at the executive orders. It actually deals with what he can do outside of congressional legislation. And you know he's someone also that wants to put things forward. So here's a good example, the 14th Amendment. There's question about birthright citizenship. It's very gray. So he said, I'm going to put out this presidential memorandum. We're going to get the ball rolling. It might end up in the courts. It might end up with legislation, but I'm going to push it forward and have the discussion to make America safe. And it's not going to be this, oh, I'm going to just sit back in the chair in the Oval Office, twiddle my thumbs, and then be like Barack Obama, I have a pen and a phone, rah, rah, scary, scary. No. It's about working with people. He clearly has put together a coalition of people that not only Democrats who supported him, but look at his nominees thus far. I mean, with the exception of Pete Hegseth, which I thought he was treated so unfairly, these cabinet members are getting big votes well into the 60s and 70s, and I think we'll see that continue. We might see a surprise here, you know, with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard.
Exactly. So we'll see how that goes today, as we'll go there in about 8 minutes as soon as it starts on Capitol Hill. This is RSBN Live. Robert McNeely alongside Matthew Alvarez here. We are live and looking forward to showing you this coverage today, and also later today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu already, I believe, in the United States, and we'll be meeting with the president a bit later today. We'll have all of that coverage for you right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. You know, we were talking about birthright citizenship a little bit. Can you explain to some of the viewers that are a little fuzzy on what that is and also where President Trump and the team stands on that?
Oh, yes. So you have the 14th, 15th, 16th Amendments that come out of the American Civil War and granting birth or citizenship to those brought over here as slaves. And there was something very interesting about Abraham Lincoln, what he had initially proposed, and sadly we never saw that because of his assassination. And he had put out there either returning to the African continent, going towards countries in the Caribbean, or even territories in the Caribbean at the time in the 19th century, or staying here in the United States. So it's interesting to see who would have taken advantage of that to leave, but then also we really don't know because that was never enacted as part of his plan, because sadly his life and presidency cut short as a result of that. But these were put into place by Congress, signed by President Johnson, if I'm correct on that. But the 14th, 15th, 16th Amendment dealing with this specifically. So there's been this gray area of people coming over here illegally while pregnant. They then have that baby. Is that child a citizen? Without going into legal, jargon, that really has not been decided at a federal level, and that's this confusion. And it's also been a political hot potato. Republicans and Democrats, especially in Congress, really over the last half century, not really wanting to deal with this because they might lose an election. And that's the argument for term limits. Of course, we see Senator Chuck Grassley there, 91 years young, quite dapper today. I like that outfit there. But that's why this argument is existing right now. And now the Trump legal team is saying that these people do not have that right to birthright citizenship. They are not citizens. Their parents are not citizens. Therefore, they're not naturalized citizens. So there is a legal argument for that. There's a perfect legal argument on the other side as well. So we'll see how this really gets debated, dialogued. I think ultimately it goes to the Supreme Court. I think it has to.
And there you go. So we'll see. And also the Supreme Court, of course, the conservative, I believe, 6-4 edge over there as well at the Supreme Court. So we know just in general with the amount of conservative justices that are there.
Right.
Let's also talk about it's 6-3.
Right, 6-3.
6-3.
And sometimes you have,
of course, 9 Supreme Court justices,
right.
of course.
And Roberts is always an interesting one.
Yes,
it's kind of
exactly.
a wild card.
Exactly. All right, let's go to Colonial Metals Group right here, freegoldguide.com, freegoldguide.com. More information on Colonial Metals Group, a great sponsor here at the network. Tax-sheltered IRAs, 401ks, all backed in gold. President Trump talking about the BRICS nations recently, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They want to use their own currency instead of the United States dollar, which causes that to fluctuate a bit. But at the end of the day, we're looking for Maganomics to return, but also to have this gold backup plan right here.
Right, absolutely. You could scan to shield your savings now with that QR code. Just something smart to do with inflation and to really have a bet against the terrible nature of that for you and your family. I mean, groceries are up, the gas pump up as well, even with conservative governance. So gold, silver, tangible metals, very smart to do in addition to properties, assets, and even you have an option to convert your 401k or IRA into that if you're not happy with those savings as well. So go to Colonial Metals Group, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting.
Freegoldguide.com gets you that free info kit. Let's talk about the conservative edge that we do have in the country. Of course, we have the executive branch, we have the president in there, we have these cabinet secretaries that are all, on the conservative side. You have Congress, you have the Senate, you have the conservative edge in the Supreme Court. These next 2 years, pedal to the metal. And that's what President Trump has been doing, historic speed to get everything taken care of for our country. And hopefully, even after the primaries and the elections in 27, right? In 26.
With the midterms.
Yeah, the midterms.
Yes, coming up in 26, so already a year away.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So it's we're looking to see all of that historic speed and strength that we're seeing happen as we see the Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. And I like how RFK Jr. called him out the other day, just calling him, "Hey, Bernie, listen here, Bernie."
Look at all the lobbyist money from the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, he's not being a very good communist lately.
Yeah.
Considering the donations he's received in the last few years.
It's ridiculous. And
it really is.
It's It's quite something there, as we are 2 minutes away from the approximate start time of the Senate Finance Committee to vote on if they will move RFK Jr.'s nomination forward, as you see at the bottom of your screen on Capitol Hill. So this will be some must-watch streaming, live streaming, of course, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Go ahead and send this to your friends and family out there as we continue to grow in numbers of the amount of viewers. More than 5 million on election night, more than 6 million on inauguration. And we're seeing several 100,000, if not 500,000, in various coverage that we're doing since then. So we see that the people are saying, you know what, we want that common sense journalism.
Right.
We want the real deal stuff. We don't want stuffy anchor type people. We want people that are kind of relatable and also that report truth and report what's happening. So we're going to bring you to this the Senate hearing here, or this Finance Committee, to vote on this, and look forward to seeing the outcome.
Oh, yes. And, you know, it was interesting. I was actually looking at the numbers from a great friend of ours, Run Gen Z, a great organization started by former State Representative Joe Mitchell out of Iowa that encourages young people, Gen Zers specifically, to run for local and state office. Do you know that only 6.7% of the Congress, if I'm not mistaken, under the age of 40?
Wow.
And 117 members is between the House and the Senate over 70. And that's the worst kind of, I don't care for generational warfare.
Right.
You know, it's people need to decide who they would like to represent them. But just a thought out there for the young people who want to get involved, don't be afraid. Our vice president, the third youngest in history and a millennial. So at 40 years young, J.D. Vance representing our country so well, as we saw yesterday in East Palestine, Ohio.
And the youngest White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, at 27 years old. But you know what? What a rock star, doing great as well. As we saw just various White House press briefings recently, and also just yesterday outside the White House, just sharing about some information in front of the press there. So at the end of the day, regardless of the age and where somebody's from and all that, do they do a good job? And that's really what it's all about with this whole DEI thing. It really doesn't matter, obviously, what somebody looks like. Or it doesn't matter. What matters is, do they do a good job? Simple as that.
And how often, I guess more often than not, do you just go grab a cup of coffee with someone and just talk to them about life? You're more likely to have things in common than not, you know, and I think you could see that. I know that's true in my life. You know, I've had the opportunity just to meet with so many different kinds of people, and I just like to adhere to that Thomas Jefferson rule that a disagreement on sociology or a religious background or difference, or even the color of your skin, should not stop you from engaging in a friendship or a business relationship. Why would that remove that? It's kind of the spice of life to get to know why someone thinks the way that they do.
Exactly. So we have a country here that is of a number of faiths, a number of backgrounds. At the end of the day, obviously, Robert and I and others here at the network, and those of you out there, we all have our personal faiths. And obviously, we've shared our Christian faith here at the network. But at the end of the day, we know President Trump, the president of all of America, those two people, man, oh man, though, I wish they would get voted out of Washington, D.C.
Looks like a bad hair day for the communist Bernie Sanders. But there's an entertaining factor to all of this because, you know, for us, I think it's almost, as much as we love sports, this for us is like the Super Bowl of American politics, to be in these rooms covering these hearings as President Trump looks to fill his cabinet. And we have two people who I think are extraordinarily unreasonable and very hypocritical, because if you look at their funding and the pharmaceuticals and the groups of lobbyists who come to support people like Elizabeth Warren and crazy Bernie Sanders, it's rather funny that they would actually have the positions that they take and the moral outrage when they're on the dais and, again, speaking over the witness. And simply all RFK Jr. has to do is say, let's go look at the people who are giving you campaign funds. And then, oh, no, we don't want to go there.
Yeah.
No, now you're on the hot seat.
No, that was a great clip from just the other day here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's 10:02 Eastern. You see the still photographers right there from all sorts of the AP or Reuters and others there taking photos. As soon as they clear out from that area, we will go there live to Capitol Hill. We'll watch with you guys because we don't just toss to this stuff and not watch. Sometimes we have to, have lunch and other things, but, we're definitely going to be staying tuned to this coverage today, and including later today, Robert, the first international leader to visit the 47th president will be the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, already in the country right now, leaving just yesterday in the wings of Zion, which is the airplane that they call, what we call Air Force One, basically, for our president. So
Fantastic name.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not sure, is it Wings of Zion or Wing of Zion? So it's the Wing of Zion. So let me get it right. It's the Wing of Zion. So again, we'll be seeing that coverage a bit later today. This, of course, is the RFK Jr. Nomination. Will we see it move forward on a vote? We'll see. We'll go back and forth with it in the sense of what the senators will be saying to RFK Jr.
Right, and it's interesting there. You see Senator Tillis from North Carolina, along with Senator Johnson, Wisconsin, Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, and Senator Tillis is somewhat that maybe yes, maybe no. They've had good discussions. He's one of those who's not necessarily MAGA. Of course, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin really prompted that amazing response by RFK regarding the unity that this nomination has brought. And Ron Johnson said, again, yeah, it's not Republican and Democrat. And RFK saying, yeah, we don't have Republican or Democrat kids. We have a chronic illness problem. And Mr. Johnson just stating how impressed he is to see President Trump and Bobby Kennedy come together to put, some differences aside, ideologically speaking, to make America healthy again. And of course, we see Mr. Warner there, along with that is Senator, is it Collins out of Colorado? And then also we saw Senator Warnock earlier from Georgia. So these are people who are very, very vocal about a number of different things. And I find it interesting that the Finance Committee actually votes on this. Why finance for health and human services?
I totally agree with you. I was surprised to see that as well. As you see, the Senator Marsha Blackburn out of the great volunteer state of Tennessee. Those of you watching in Tennessee, hello to you. And those of you watching obviously around the country, thank you so much for live streaming in. I'm alongside Robert McNeely. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We are live here on RSBN Live. Again, a lot of coverage today on February 4th, 2025. AOC, according to Breaking 911, says that Elon Musk is one of the most unintelligent billionaires I've ever seen. What a joke AOC is, of course. Let's see if there's any other breaking news situations out there. It looks like China will impose 10 to 15% tariffs on U.S. oil, agriculture, equipment, coal, and LNG. We'll see how the president responds to that. And then the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announces that El Salvador's president has agreed to accept deportees from the U.S., regardless of nationality, as well as violent criminals currently imprisoned in America. So a lot of global and foreign policy happening, a lot of domestic issues as well. And speaking of that, the Health and Human Services hopeful Secretary, RFK Jr., to make America healthy again. And when I think of that, not being an expert on all things health and nutrition, the only thing I think about with this right now would be get the toxins out of our food.
Exactly. A lot of common sense. Get it out of our soil. He can also help with the EPA, and Lee Zeldin there, who has a lot of work on his hands going to East Palestine, Ohio, and then, of course, with California and the wildfires, all the changes that we are seeing there. But, it's interesting, too, as President Trump meets with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, yesterday, a sovereign wealth fund idea announced by President Trump in the Oval Office. Will he discuss that perhaps with Benjamin Netanyahu at all, as our two countries so closely linked in trade and in common values? We know that Egypt has something similar to that, which is why Egypt is one of the most wealthy nations in the entire world as a result.
And speaking of the Middle East, I know we're going to get to Capitol Hill here, but one more point to that. We do know, of course, in the first administration, President Trump with those Abraham Accords, 4 peace treaties with 4 Arab countries. So maybe there will be an expansion of that. I know that the Prime Minister said yesterday before boarding his Israeli plane, said that he wants to broaden the circle of peace in the Middle East and strengthen security. So, and then to achieve a remarkable era of peace through strength. So it'll be quite the meeting today of the Israeli leader and our American leader. And we'll have that here on the network. Let's shift back again to the room there as everyone's getting ready to see the great RFK Jr. What an awesome moment that was over the rally campaign season when it was announced that RFK Jr. would be joining Team Trump, basically.
Right.
And then when he stepped onto the podium there for that TPUSA event in Arizona.
Right. And then his former running mate, Miss Shanahan, she has actually mentioned that if anyone votes against, Republican or Democrat, Bobby Kennedy in this moment, in this hearing, whether it's the Finance Committee, and when it goes to the cloture vote, and then, of course, the final vote in the Senate, she's going to primary them. She's taken it personally with her former running mate. Of course, two former Democrats that became independents ran, a respectable campaign, and Bobby Kennedy bringing that up in this hearing as well, saying that the reason I ran was to bring Republican and Democrats together. I'm done with the tribal politics. And he's handled this situation so well. And I think the White House was prepared for this. I think a lot of these people being picked in November probably prepped for all this. Again, a lot of these people, lawyers and litigators, they're involved in the room where it happens and in uncomfortable situations. And all of these nominees have handled themselves with such grace, with arrows being literally fired in their direction. And it's really, shame on some of the far left for just speaking over people and trying to silence the truth.
To your point, do you think today's vote will be simply that? Will it be a very quick situation here? Will they say, how do you vote? How do you vote, yay or nay, and go down the line, and that's it? Because we have already heard the back and forth and all the points.
Right.
So I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
I'm thinking right now, because you see the chairman and the ranking member discussing more of this, and we've seen a tactic of the Democrats. They want to add more minutes or more time. And Mr. Wyden, of course, the senator from Oregon, has tried that on a couple of occasions. They might be discussing that there right now of the rules that were agreed to. So it's been, again, playing and showing for the cameras. But I think he'll attempt to do some form of delay once again. And then Mr. Crapo, of course, the chairman out of Idaho, has chuckled. He's handled this extraordinarily well and just said, we've agreed to this. We're staying within the parameters. We have to get back to the business. Of course, they have other votes that are presented across the entire Senate. So I'm sure they're discussing procedural aspects in the last few moments. And they seem to have a very good working relationship as chairman and ranking member as well. So I think this ultimately will go to a vote. I think it's going to be split down party lines. So I think you'll have something like a 14-13, something very close. But Tom Tillis could be that make or break there, given that he's been kind of back and forth on potentially voting for Bobby Kennedy. And then another thing some of these senators do to go back to their constituents, I might vote it out of committee or out of cloture, but ultimately I'm upset or I'm for. So they play these voting games that get quite interesting, and that's why they can spin it when they go back to their home state to say, I was really doing this, or I really wanted to. Typical politicians. Yeah.
The career politician thing, I know you guys, most of you watching right now are sick and tired of it. So that's why we wanted the outsider to win, and he did, President Trump in office, and bringing in outsiders that are the real deal when it comes to taking care of this country and making it great again. Let's get ready. Let's go to Washington, D.C. here at any moment as the still photographers have left the front of the area there. So we'll be going there at any second as this will be getting kicked off, and we'll be seeing RFK Jr. In the room. Let's go to Washington, D.C. right now.
We are meeting today to consider the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. to be Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We are still waiting to get all of our members here, and while we wait for that to occur, we will proceed with statements. And I will proceed first, then Senator Wyden, and then we will rotate from one side to the other until we are at a point where we are prepared for the vote. Does that fit with you, Senator Wyden? Yes, sir. Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, will have the opportunity to deliver much-needed change to our nation's health care system. He has spent his career fighting to end America's chronic illness epidemic and has been a leading advocate for health care transparency, both for patients and for taxpayers. Mr. Kennedy has also clearly responded to our questions during the rigorous due diligence process in his hearing also, and in the course of answering over 900 questions for the record that were asked by members of this committee. In response to members of the committee, Mr. Kennedy has even amended his ethics agreement, going beyond what is required by the Government Office of Ethics. Mr. Kennedy has proven his commitment to the role of Secretary of the HHS, and I will vote in favor of his nomination. I strongly encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do the same. And with that, I recognize our ranking member, Senator Wyden, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll have a brief statement, and then several of my colleagues on our side are also going to make brief statements. This morning, we're going to vote on Robert Kennedy's nomination to serve as our nation's chief health care officer. Before we get to Mr. Kennedy and why I believe he is singularly unfit to serve as HHS Secretary, I'd like to say this. The last several days we've witnessed an authoritarian takeover of our federal government by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They have set their sights on a full purge of anyone in government that doesn't bend the knee and follow their orders. They've taken over the Treasury Department's payment system. And colleagues, that has a direct effect on major programs within our committee's jurisdiction that include Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. For example, this committee voted for a major reform of pharmacy benefit manager legislation. We passed it 26-0, but Trump and Musk killed it. Think what they could do with abuse of the payment system. Now, in my view, much of this is of dubious legality and constitutional authority, and certainly flies in face of congressional responsibilities. I'll wrap up on this point by saying I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will not sit by while Musk and Trump make a mockery of the power Republicans hold in their congressional majority. Now more than ever, the American people need leaders that will stand up to these abuses. That brings me to Mr. Kennedy. A recent analysis showed that Mr. Kennedy has made 114 separate appearances in just the last 4 years where he has espoused anti-vaccine views or spread information about the efficacy of vaccines, misinformation specifically. In 36 of those instances, Mr. Kennedy directly linked vaccines to autism. Last week, Mr. Kennedy was given ample authority on a bipartisan basis to recant his decades-long career peddling anti-vaccine conspiracies. Instead, he spent his time with us dodging and weaving and gave no indication that if confirmed as HHS Secretary, he would stand by the long-settled science surrounding routine vaccinations. Just take the Samoa measles outbreak as an example. Mr. Kennedy told me, and I quote, "We don't know what was killing them," speaking about the 83 measles deaths during an outbreak of the disease in 2019. Just yesterday, colleagues, the Director General of Health from Samoa called this claim a total fabrication. Peddling these conspiracy theories as the nation's chief health officer is going to be deadly for kids across the country. On abortion, Mr. Kennedy's answers once again raised still more questions. He refused to tell us whether he would blindly follow a directive from Donald Trump to break the law and end access to mifepristone. And he seemed to have no understanding of his role in enforcing existing federal laws that guarantee women the right to life-saving abortion care. Mr. Kennedy also failed on several occasions to show a basic understanding of the Medicare and Medicaid programs he would be tasked with overseeing. Colleagues, that alone should be disqualifying. Mr. Kennedy has given us no reason to believe he'll be anything other than a rubber stamp for plans to gut Medicaid and rip health care away from the American people, and be a yes man if ordered by Musk or Trump to take an illegal action. I close with this, colleagues. Today we're going to make a judgment about the future of science in this country. We're going to make decisions that are going to impact the health and well-being of Americans for years to come. I agree, and I say this to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, that the healthcare status quo needs substantial changes so we get better, more affordable care to patients. And that leaves, given my statement, the question in front of us now that's pretty simple. Do senators want their legacy to include disregarding basic health science and instead elevate conspiracy theorists? Making Robert Kennedy Secretary of Health and Human Services, in my view, colleagues, would be a grave threat to the health of the American people. And I urge my colleagues this morning to vote no.
So we have everybody here. Can I ask that we do the vote now and then do the comment?
Why don't you do it 2 or 3 on each and then we go to the vote?
Can I go?
Yeah, we're going to do it.
So Senator Wyden, we have all of our members here. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that we will have 2 or 3 on each side who wanted to make statements do so before the vote. So please, everyone, hold with us while we have those statements made, and then we will proceed to the vote. I know we've got a lot of folks here pushing on some. Do you want to vote now?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I've got several colleagues who were under the impression after we talked that we would have 2 or 3, and I'm happy for both sides to make brief remarks, and I'd still like to stay with that.
I did make that commitment, and so I could say to my colleagues on my side, I would appreciate it if you would hold your remarks until after the vote. We will let a couple on your side have their remarks, and then we will proceed to the vote.
Great. Thank you.
And who would be next?
Senator Cantwell.
Senator Cantwell.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I didn't, when you said 2 or 3 people, I didn't know who you had in mind, but being next in seniority, I appreciate the opportunity. Today is very concerning to me because of the future of what I think our nation faces. When I think of this issue, I think of my Pacific Northwest leadership, how Paul Allen, on his own, invested $100 million to fight Ebola. I think of Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, not just trying to eradicate polio and work on these issues, but to think of a regime that helps not just our nation's health, but global health. So with the UW, the University of Washington, the Cancer Research Center, all of these entities are a collaboration of saying we have to go faster in solving these threats to our nation as it relates to health. Now, we can have a big discussion, which I think you guys all want to have a big discussion about whether and when what happened in the Wuhan province. But I can tell you, we were the first city. We had the first patient. We had the first people who died in nursing homes. We had an emergency room at a hospital who basically was just begging for any equipment we could get them. The whole community stood up and moved as fast as we possibly could and broke down barriers to save lives. And that is what we have to continue to do on innovation. We cannot let another country get ahead of us on some sort of warfare issue and not have a response when it comes to a vaccine. So the most challenging, I wanted to vote for Mr. Kennedy in the context of my family's history. My dad stood behind his father the night his father gave the famous speech. I told him in my office, in my family, the Kennedys stood up. But when he answered Senator Cassidy's question, and he couldn't even give him the answer that, yes, the data is there to support vaccines today. I don't need any more data. All of a sudden, I saw this world that we got affected by in Seattle not being stood up for. I need someone at HHS who is going to say we're going to be a leader in medical technology, science, vaccines. We are going to fight foreign powers. We are going to be there to provide global health. And I don't want a recalcitrant. I need a leader, and that is why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that Senator Warnock will now speak. Following Senator Warnock, we will proceed to the vote, and then anyone else who wants to make remarks will be allowed to make remarks. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. At a rally
a few months ago, Donald Trump said that he was going to allow Mr. Robert Kennedy to, quote, go wild on health. Go wild. Of all the things that I can think of that I'd like to see a Secretary of Health and Human Services do, go wild is not on the list. Mr. Robert Kennedy is manifestly unqualified for the job he seeks. And in both my live and written questions for the record, he failed to commit to protecting access to affordable health care, failed to commit to protecting the people who are protecting us. The problem that the CDC has is that every day these noble civil servants and workers protect us from dangers that we don't see. And often you don't get credit for protecting people from things that they don't see. I simply do not trust him to oversee the CDC. He's unqualified, and I dare say everybody here knows it. We need a serious person at the helm of the HHS, an agency responsible for about half of the health of about half of all Americans. Mr. Kennedy appears more obsessed in chasing conspiracy theories than chasing solutions to lower health care costs for working families in Georgia and to make sure that we are protected. The last thing we need is a dilettante dabbling in conspiracy theories at HHS. I cannot vote for a nominee who is not going to lower health care costs for Georgians, who is going to undermine basic science in public health, who puts his own interests above the health and the well-being of others. For the health and well-being of all of our families, the people who count on us, to think about them in these rooms of power. I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to look past politics and think of country and to find the moral courage to do what's right. Oppose this nomination.
Thank you, Senator Warnock. We now have not only a quorum, but all members of the committee are present. I move that the committee favorably report the nomination of the Honorable Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is there a second? Second. There is a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley. Aye. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn. Aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune. Aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy. Aye. Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford. Aye. Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines. Aye. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young. Aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Aye. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Aye. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell. No. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren. No. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders. No. Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith. No. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan. No. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch. No. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman. Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues to hold off at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people coming before who is, in fact, not a trained healthcare expert. He views this through the lens of an attorney. He's brought many lawsuits on food safety, vaccine safety, a number of other things. But, Mr. Chair, I think it was Senator Warnock that said that the president said he was going to go wild in the Department of Health and Human Services. I hope he does. I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of health care. I hope he goes wild, and instead of having the discussions that we have had for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate of making Medicaid work and making people on Medicaid healthier, I hope he goes wild and figures out how to do it, because the status quo has not achieved much in the way of gain. I hope he goes wild on food safety discussions so that we can actually improve our food safety supply. I hope he goes wild on the health care supply chains and, in fact, tries to make sure that drug prices go down instead of bludgeoning pharmaceutical companies, get everybody in the room and make sure that we do this right. Reduce the cost of bringing a vaccine to market, reduce the cost of bringing drugs and therapeutics to market. Look at the full supply chain, and somebody with a legal mind may do that. He is no health professional. In fact, he's the first, I believe, and since I've been alive, who's not been a healthcare professional in a scientific sense. But he is a professional in terms of carrying this forward and holding people accountable through the courts. And also, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to go much longer, but I had a lot of people call me earlier. I had people from the agriculture industry call me and express concerns, but I'm not aware of any organized, credible group, the Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag Commissioners, or others, who have said that we should vote against Mr. Kennedy. I heard people express their concerns about his pro-choice position. And yet I haven't seen any pro-life organization score this vote or recommend that we should vote against it. I heard him call the NRA a terrorist organization, and yet the NRA is silent on his confirmation. And so I've heard him say that GMOs are a concern. Hopefully we can convince him that not all GMOs are. It's feeding the world. Corn, drought-resistant strains of healthy vegetables will move on. Protein producers were mad about lawsuits were brought against them, but there's been no organized opposition against them. And so maybe it is time to have a different kind of disruptor there. The only way that the only way that Bobby Kennedy and I will get crosswise is if he does actually take a position against the safety of proven vaccines. That will be a problem for me. He answered a very important question to me during the hearing. I asked him specifically if it was his intent to let the scientists of the CDC, the NIH, BARDA, and other organizations to work independently. He said to me under oath that he would. If he fails to do that, that will be a concern for me and something I'll bring up in a future oversight hearing. But, Mr. Chair, we have not made appreciable progress in Medicaid and improving the health of the population on Medicaid. We have a SNAP program that does have too much sugar and things that are eligible in that program that should be eliminated to make these people who are on free and reduced lunch healthier. We need to stop having full trash cans in public school cafeterias full of stuff that the kids aren't eating and figure out how those kids on free and reduced lunch actually have a healthier lifestyle. And so I, for one, think that it is time to put a disruptor in. It is time to put somebody in there that's going to go wild. But there are areas where I think that's exactly what we need. And there are areas of health and human services that if you touch the gold standard for the NIH and the CDC, then I'll have a problem with that nominee, and we'll bring that up during oversight. But it was for those reasons. And the fact is that there's not a single organization that I consider to be credible in this space, in agriculture, in Second Amendment, or in pro-life, who have openly objected and scored this vote. I believe that silence is consent. And the fact that they haven't suggests to me that folks that I'm instructed by are okay with this nomination. And for those reasons, I voted for Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we had our hearing last week, Mr. Kennedy has amended his ethics agreement. Recall that his ethics agreement said that while he was Secretary of HHS, he intended to retain a financial interest in ongoing vaccine litigation that he was already collecting money from, and that he wanted to continue to collect that money even though he could affect the outcome of that litigation. Now, he has since changed his position on that. Once this has been exposed and people have talked about it and have some pretty serious reservations about his doing that, He has said that he will instead give his financial interest to his son. That is a fig leaf that is so small, it would take a magnifying glass to see it. No one is fooled about what's happening here. Mr. Kennedy refuses to say that he will not participate in these lawsuits financially the day after he leaves office. And yet, Mr. Kennedy has acknowledged, first, that the American people have a right to know that the decisions you're making are decisions that are in their interest, not in your future financial interest. He has said he thinks that's the right standard, and yet he has figured out how to make money off his anti-vax positions. He's already raked in $2.5 million. He is in a position where he can affect the outcomes by things he does as Secretary of HHS, and yet he refuses to say that he will delay by even a day taking on anti-vax lawsuits the minute he leaves. That is an appalling conflict of interest, and it's one in which the American people can reasonably ask, is Mr. Kennedy's plan to help the American people, or is he planning to use this job to further enrich himself, and he's pointed out with his son, and enrich his family? The importance of this litigation cannot be overstated. This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space. We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us, and I think that's a terrible mistake.
Thank you. Senator Welch, did you wish to speak?
I did, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for your statement. I want a disruptor in the healthcare system and one leading it. I don't want a destroyer. And there's three issues before any nominee that we have to consider. One is character, another is competence, and a third is priorities. We did not have Carolyn Kennedy here, but she gave a statement. And she said that Bobby was able to attract people through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risk and break the rules. And those might be desirable qualities if it was accompanied by sober judgment and behavior, because the person who leads a major organization has to have the confidence of the people that work for him. And frankly, some of the things that he did that never explained, a chainsaw taken off the head of a whale, dumping a bear in Central Park for his own amusement. These are just weird things. And we never really got into the character issue of what is required for a person who runs such a major department. The competence question, this is all on a wing and a prayer and a hope. There's no record of Mr. Kennedy having experience in managing a large organization, in medicine, no experience with science, and none of the prior experiences required not only to run a major organization, Health and Human Services, but also the CDC, the NIH, and all the other organizations that are under the umbrella of healthcare. And by the way, on the competence issue, let's be candid. This was a deal where Mr. Kennedy was running for president as a Democrat. He lost, and he approached President Trump to make a deal. And for political reasons, the deal was made. And the appointment was going to be that he's Health and Human Services. The president has a right to make that deal. Mr. Kennedy can seek it, but it doesn't translate into competence. And the third is priorities. The priority for Mr. Kennedy is about the vaccines and his theory of that. And we need reliable vaccines and not us conspiracy theorists on that. But you know, the healthcare system is not working for the American people. It is it's too costly. Our employers who care deeply about providing employer-sponsored health care can't afford these premiums. The folks who are getting their insurance on their own can't afford it. Even Obamacare is getting so expensive because the prices are escalating constantly with pharma expenses, with the providers having it, with private equity getting into health care. Mr. Kennedy's priority was about his view of vaccines. It was not about making healthcare more affordable and accessible. And in response to really a very direct and easy, open-ended question from Senator Cassidy, Mr. Kennedy showed a woeful ignorance, even between the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So we have a healthcare system that is not serving, as it should, the interest of American citizens, of American businesses, and American taxpayers. And I, after this hearing, did not have confidence that Mr. Kennedy would be the one to lead us to a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Welch. That concludes the remarks that senators have requested to make. And hearing nothing further, I'd like to thank all of our members for attending. This Finance Committee stands adjourned.
All right, so breaking news you see right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network as the Senate Financial Committee votes 14-13 to advance RFK Jr.'s nomination. So, Robert, what is next?
Yes, so they will go to a cloture vote. At some point here, we'll watch to see when that's scheduled, and then, of course, that moves to a final vote. So an amazing day, 14-13, right down party lines. You know, those big two potential Republican holdouts, Tom Tillis of North Carolina and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, were huge yes votes in order to move Mr. Kennedy into the full Senate vote. So we'll see that forthcoming, hopefully within the next few days or even weeks, perhaps even today. So we'll keep an eye on that with the Senate schedule as well. But this was a huge hurdle to get over as the Democrats were in lockstep opposing him.
And you saw it right here on RSBN Live. Also later today, the Prime Minister of Israel, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, already in Washington, D.C. We'll have live coverage a bit later today at 3 o'clock Eastern. We will be live right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. A lot of great sponsors to thank for providing us this ability to go live here. That is Colonial Metals Group. This is the Free Gold Guide, freegoldguide.com. All the information you need on the tax-sheltered IRA and 401k in gold.
And you can scan that QR code right on your screen for all of the information regarding really a common sense thing to do now, given inflation, given what's happened in the country the last few years, even with conservative governance. It's smart to have gold, silver, and precious metals as part of your assets. So go to our friends over at Colonial Metals Group and make sure you beat inflation. It's the best bet you can make.
It is, definitely. Tax Network USA, staying in the financial area. All you have to do is call 800-357-1415. Any questions you have for back taxes, you can settle your back taxes today or at least get on the plan. And that's what's great, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can't do it right this second, it's still a good plan to have.
Oh, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. TNUSA.com/RSBN, April 15th, of course, that tax deadline. But we want you to settle your back taxes today. Don't have that fear and that dark cloud hanging over your head dealing with all of this. The Patriots over at Tax Network USA also know how to handle property taxes. They're experts at state taxes, federal income tax as well. And we know how the IRS has been bloated under the former President Biden, of course. And President Trump has even said might send some of those IRS agents down to the border. But these are the Patriots here who know how to handle this. Call 800-357-1415, TNUSA.com/RSBN.
RepublicanRed.com. So Republican Red Winery, the RSBN promo code goes a long way with this product. Also, we were about, 5 days away from the Super Bowl, to your point, if that's something that you want to order and enjoy while watching the Super Bowl.
Yes, a great idea. From Lodi, California, the Central Coast of the Golden State, family run and operated, and all of the proceeds, or a portion of the proceeds you actually purchase with this from RepublicanRed.com, go to conservative outlets and Republican efforts. So a great place to know that you can not only have delicious wine, but also a place that supports your values.
RepublicanRed.com. Use that RSBN promo code. Speaking of promo codes, let's go to MyPillow.com. The mega sale. I like when Robert says it. Go for it.
Mega sale. It's tremendous. It's fantastic. It's quite frankly the best. And we know this because the My Cross, you can save 30% of that replica cross that Mr. Mike Lindell wears proudly when he does his advertisements and his marketing. Of course, the My Towels, flannel sheets, going for an impressive $29.98 and $44.98 respectively. 800-836-7566, mypillow.com/RSBN. And I was actually looking yesterday. I got a new batch of My Pillows because I just love this organization, and I'm a big fan of Mike Lindell.
Same here, and my wife and I have a lot of My Pillow products. I'm sure those of you out there watching have a lot of products as well. Maybe get a new gift, especially for Valentine's Day coming up. So mypillow.com. If you'd like to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801, RSBN to 801-801. We also have a great newsletter here, rsbnetwork.com/newsletter, for America First updates and other live events and information on those. Speaking of that, programming note, 3 o'clock today, RSBN Live. Robert McNeely, myself, Matthew Alvarez, will be live here as we toss to great coverage in Washington, D.C., as President Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That's at 3 o'clock. For all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, we'll see you then.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Parents and grandparents, the 2024 Kids Guide to President Trump is here, and it's free. As a bonus, your child gets a free issue of Everbright Kids Magazine and Activity Book, and a free video lesson. Order now at freetrumpbook.com. That's freetrumpbook.com.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.